Manchester United fans, something very interesting has just happened in the transfer market, and it could be one of the biggest surprises of the final weeks of the window. Manchester United have reportedly made contact with Paris Saint-Germain over one of Europe's most exciting young attackers. His name is Ibrahim Mbaye, and this is not just another random transfer rumor. Mbaye is an 18-year-old forward who has already played senior football for PSG, has international experience with Senegal, and has attracted interest from several of Europe's biggest clubs. But now, Manchester United have reportedly entered the race, and there is one number that makes this story even more interesting: 50 million euros. That is the valuation being reported for Mbaye, which works out at roughly £42.7 million. So the question is obvious. Why would Manchester United be interested in an 18-year-old PSG winger when the club has already been working on its attacking options? And could United actually make a serious move for him before the transfer window closes? Let's break everything down. First of all, we need to be clear about the current situation. Manchester United have reportedly made enquiries about Mbaye. This means there is interest. It means conversations or information gathering have taken place, but it does not mean that Manchester United have agreed a transfer. That distinction is extremely important. According to recent reports, United are one of several major European clubs to have asked PSG about the teenager. Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Porto, RB Leipzig, and Roma have also been mentioned in connection with the player. So United are not alone, but something has changed. Liverpool's interest in Mbaye has reportedly cooled because of PSG's asking price, and that could potentially give Manchester United an opportunity. Reports today suggest Liverpool have become less enthusiastic about paying the €50 million valuation, while United are now keeping tabs on the situation. And this is where the story gets very interesting, because Manchester United have been looking for young players who can develop into major stars. The club's recruitment strategy has increasingly focused on players who can fit a high-intensity, aggressive style of football, and Mbaye fits that profile. He is young, he is quick, he can play across the forward line, and importantly, he already has experience at one of Europe's biggest clubs. Mbaye's versatility is one of the reasons he could be attractive to Michael Carrick. Reports suggest he can operate on either flank and also play through the middle. That gives a manager options. Imagine having a player who can start on the right, move to the left, or even operate centrally depending on the situation. For a Premier League manager, that flexibility can be extremely valuable. But there is another reason why Mbaye's situation has become complicated at PSG. Competition. Paris Saint-Germain already have an incredible number of attacking options. The squad contains established stars and highly rated young forwards, meaning opportunities for an 18-year-old are not guaranteed. Reports suggest PSG are considering the player's future partly because of his limited opportunities and the competition for places, and that creates the possibility of a move. Mbaye reportedly wants regular first-team football. PSG, meanwhile, could potentially consider either a permanent transfer or a loan depending on the circumstances. For Manchester United, that is important, because if PSG are genuinely willing to listen, United could have a chance. But would United pay £42.7 million? That is the big question. For an 18-year-old, it would be a significant investment. Manchester United would essentially be betting on Mbaye's future. The club would not necessarily be buying a finished superstar. They would be buying potential. And that is exactly where this transfer becomes risky, because Mbaye may become a world-class player, or he may need several seasons before reaching that level. United would therefore have to decide whether the potential reward is worth the financial risk. But there is something that makes this situation different from many other transfers. Mbaye has already shown Manchester United exactly what he can do. During United's pre-season draw against PSG, Mbaye scored PSG's opening goal before Ibrahim Mbaye equalized for United. Reuters reported that United eventually drew the match 1-1, and that performance could have made an impression. Think about it. You are Manchester United. Your playing PSG. An 18-year-old attacker scores against you. Then, days later, reports emerge that Manchester United have made contact with PSG regarding that same player. It certainly makes the story more interesting, but United need to be careful. One goal in a pre-season match should not determine a $42.7 million transfer. The club will have studied much more than that. They will have looked at his movement, his pace, his decision-making, his technical ability, his physical development, his mentality, and most importantly, whether he can eventually handle the Premier League. Because the Premier League is a completely different challenge. The speed is higher, the physical demands are enormous, and the pressure at Manchester United is unlike almost anywhere else. But if the recruitment team believes Mbaye has the mentality to handle that pressure, United could see him as a long-term investment. And this is where Michael Carrick becomes important. Carrick is trying to build a Manchester United side that can compete at the highest level. He needs players who can run, players who can press, players who can attack space, players who can transition quickly, and a young forward with Mbaye's versatility could potentially fit into that system. But there is another question. If Manchester United sign Mbaye, what happens to Marcus Rashford? This is where things become extremely complicated. Rashford has just returned to Manchester United after his Barcelona loan. Carrick has indicated that Rashford remains a United player, and there is now an opportunity for him to be reintegrated into the squad. So why would United also consider another winger? Perhaps because the club does not want to depend on one player. Perhaps because Mbaye is viewed as a long-term project rather than an immediate replacement. Or perhaps United simply believe that an opportunity has appeared in the market that is too good to ignore. And there is another possibility. Manchester United could potentially explore a loan. Some reports have suggested that a loan is one possible solution, while other interested clubs are looking at a permanent transfer. A loan would completely change the conversation. United could potentially get Mbaye into their environment without immediately committing the full £42.7 million. But will PSG accept that? That remains unclear. And this is exactly why the story is worth watching, because right now, the door is open. Manchester United have shown interest. PSG are reportedly willing to consider Mbaye's future. Liverpool's position may have changed, and several European clubs remain interested, but no agreement has been reached. So the next question is, will Manchester United actually make a serious move? And if they do, what would Mbaye bring to Old Trafford? That's where part 2 gets very interesting. Let's imagine for a moment that Manchester United decide to push ahead. What exactly would they be getting? They would be signing an 18-year-old attacker who has already experienced first-team football at PSG and has international experience with Senegal. He is not simply an academy player with potential. He has already been exposed to elite-level football, and that matters. But his biggest attraction may be his versatility. Mbaye can operate from the wings and can also play centrally. That means Carrick could potentially use him in different situations. If United need pace on the left, he can provide it. If they need another option on the right, he can play there. If injuries hit the squad, his flexibility becomes even more valuable. And that is exactly the type of player modern managers love. A player who can solve multiple problems. But there is another major advantage: age. At just 18, Mbaye would not be expected to become Manchester United's main attacker immediately. That means United could develop him gradually. He could train with the first team, learn Carrick's system, adapt to English football, play selected matches, and slowly increase his responsibilities. That would potentially allow the club to develop him without putting enormous pressure on his shoulders from day one. But there is a major problem. £42.7 million is a lot of money for a teenager, and that is where United have to be extremely careful. Manchester United cannot afford to simply collect talented players. Every signing needs to have a clear purpose. If United spend more than £40 million on Mbaye, the club needs to believe that he can eventually become a major first-team player. Otherwise, the transfer could become another expensive gamble. And United fans have seen enough expensive gambles. They want recruitment that makes sense. They want players who fit the system, and they want players who can actually improve the team. So the recruitment team will have to answer one simple question. Is Ibrahim Mbaye good enough to justify the price? Right now, the reports suggest that PSG value him at more than €50 million. That valuation is significant, and PSG are not under enormous pressure to sell because Mbaye's contract situation gives them protection. Reports indicate that his current deal runs into 2028. That means PSG can negotiate from a strong position. They don't have to panic. They don't have to accept a low offer. And if multiple clubs remain interested, PSG can wait for the best proposal. That is why United would need to move carefully. Because Bayern is interested, Dortmund is interested, Liverpool have been interested, Aston Villa have been linked.